All right, welcome back, everybody, to America's Mom. I am your host, Sharona Bishop, and I am one very concerned biological female, adult human female, and I am a mother who actually birthed children with my uterus. I know for a fact I am, in fact, a woman. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of men out there cosplaying women and pretending to be women, but they are not women, and of course vice versa, but I'm not really concerned about that because the incidence of violence by female to male transgenders is very, very low. Not worried about that. I'm worried about the male to females out there who are cosplaying women face, who are getting off on erotica pretending to be women every time they put on pantyhose, slide on a dress, curl their grown out hair, or apply makeup to try to look like a passable woman. It concerns me greatly. Flock camera updates today, transgender updates today, and of course, election updates today because a very, very important ruling just came down yesterday from the DC federal court, and it is very powerful. It will change the trajectory of the November elections. There is no doubt. So, welcome back to America's Mom. I want to start with flock cameras today because that's just what we're doing now, right? You know, it's funny to me. I was thinking about yesterday. I was walking through. I was like, the origination of America's Mom had nothing to do with elections. It had everything to do with securing freedom for our families, protecting our children so they would have a country that they could grow up and live free and be able to pursue their American dream here. That's how we started. We wanted our children to be free of sexualization. We certainly did not want to live in a police state. And those of you who are living in blue states, you are living in a police state. It's alarming to me to be living in East Texas and be watching flock cameras go up everywhere and there be no public protests. Nobody standing outside the sheriff's office saying what the H is going on here. I the only thing that's bringing me tremendous relief is knowing that deflock.org is based out of Tyler, Texas, which is here in East Texas, and seeing all of the social media action, seeing the open records requests that are going on across Texas, trying to figure out who is allowing this, who is funding it, who's paying for it. But what really warms my heart is seeing the generation, the greatest generation. They're still around, guys. The greatest generation still exists, men like 77-year-old Mr. Gunn. And yes, that is spelled Gunn, a Florida man who decided to take it upon himself to block flop cameras because he understood what? He understood that he has a constitutional right to privacy. He's a law abiding citizen and he doesn't need anyone sticking their nose in his business. And if they do, he said, I'm going to chop it right off. Take a listen. 77-year-old Mr. Glenn out of Florida, reminding us why we don't want 24/7 surveillance and to live in a police state.
Yo, what's that piece of shit hanging on the pole?
That's a piece of shit.
That's a fuck camera, right?
Yeah, they're gonna arrest
And you got the boys out here protecting it.
Yeah, they're gonna arrest me.
They got like, I don't know, $1,000 worth of gold? Yo, what's your name? I'll come bail you out. Carl Dunn?
Gun.
Gunn? Gunn?
Yes.
If you hit the county, I'm coming to bail you out today.
Thank you.
Fuck the flock cameras. And fuck you for not standing up for us.
I mean, you know, I there's nothing more to say. The citizen who pulled up to support Mr. Gunn in his efforts to block the camera, which by the way, he was using like a pool, one of those pool scoopers to block the camera from filming citizens, was being interrogated by police. And, you know, to their credit, they just eventually stood back and left him alone because they know it's not right either. This is wrong, what's going on. Not to mention the numerous cases. We just posted this up yesterday, actually. The many, many cases so far of law enforcement officers, police officers who have been abusing the data on the flock cameras to, yes, in fact, stalk love interests. Yes, it's a fact. It is happening. Abuse of authority, abuse of power and information. Oh my gosh. Of course, you guys, it happens. This is a human issue. And that is why our founders knew we can't live this way. We need to have as much freedom as possible. We need to self govern. We don't need cameras watching us. We need to be able to self govern and police our own selves so that we don't end up in a situation like we're currently experiencing. If you think that the flock camera situation really is based off peace and safety, and they just want us to be protected, then I want to flip the script a little bit. I was just shown this video before we started the show today, and I thought that is exactly right. If it's all about peace and safety, nobody needs safety more right now than our elected officials. Just ask them. They're under threats constantly. People are constantly wanting to off them, especially if you're an election clerk, right? Or a secretary of state. I mean, people are just, they're stalking you left and right. They're threatening your life. Whatever else they say and claim is happening to them, they need real security. They need 24/7 surveillance. I stand with this citizen who recently spoke at a city council meeting, flipping the script on the flat cameras. Tell me what you think. Take a listen.
Today, I'm excited to announce a new company called Shepherd Safety. We're launching satellites to watch over Casa Grande day and night. Our AI will monitor where government officials go, where they stop, who they meet with, and when they return home. We've already started collecting and building profiles on your vehicles, spouses' vehicles, children's vehicles, and other visual characteristics. We'll combine that information with publicly available data, Bluetooth signals, advertising IDs, vehicle information, commercial data sources. There's no difference than the current flock safety capture systems. Local businesses will be invited to join our network so government officials can continue being protected while shopping, eating, or traveling throughout the city. Some of you might think this sounds invasive, and you may worry about abuse, you may worry about unauthorized access, tracking innocent people. We understand those concerns. After all, those are the exact same concerns of all the citizens. Now, this is satire. I would never do this to you. Could I? Probably. But I wouldn't. Because it's wrong. Just like what you guys are doing to us is wrong. I'm innocent. I don't do anything wrong. You're tracking and uploading my information, my movements every day without my permission. And I don't appreciate it. And I'd like you to stop. I'd like you to do something about it. I'd like you to put it behind a warrant, just like my phone records. That's what I'm asking you guys to do.
Amen. We're in agreement. We're in complete and total agreement with that citizen. There is no greater issue right now than the normalization of the police state, the normalization of you have no privacy. I listen to these teenagers who don't understand anything about liberty and freedom yet. They're just enjoying their lives. They have no idea what it means to live free right now. And they say, well, what does it matter? If you're not doing anything wrong, why can't the police know what you're doing? Why can't they see what you're doing? As we've learned, as we've seen demonstrated repeatedly, not just in America, but around the world, if the government wants to find a crime on you because you have now become a thorn in their side in some form or fashion or capacity, they will do so. And giving them full and total license to stalk you, if this script was flipped and we were doing this to elected officials, we would be landing so hard in federal prison, especially going after a congressman or a senator, filming the president every single place he goes. You would be sitting in prison. So the fact that the same um, measure of justice, determinate justice, is not being used on elected officials and law enforcement doing this to us, that's how you know we're in trouble. That's how you know that we're no longer living under a constitutional republic. This is really dangerous stuff because we've seen repeatedly how government determines who are the winners and who are the losers. And it's becoming more blatant than ever. We thought after the Biden administration was out, everything was going to return back to some form of liberty and freedom. But these flock cameras, and knowing for a fact that the flock camera, the CEO, number one, deems it his duty and responsibility to be the face of peace and safety throughout America. Number two, how fast he's been able to populate the flock cameras all over the country. I wish I had that graphic just to show you. In 2024, we've got virtually none. And then all of a sudden, now, less than 2 years later, flock cameras are everywhere across the country. This shows you, I promise you, this shows you a marriage between, it's a public private partnership here happening. It's a marriage between the flock cameras and government going on right now. And somebody, some excellent lobbyist on his behalf, on this company's behalf, was able to expedite this very quickly under the promise of unlimited data. Data is the new exchange, guys. That's the new currency. That's the most valuable currency is data. So keeping that in mind, I want to share this video with you. This is the spirit. Yeah, I really want you to listen. Like, don't be doing anything else. Just like stop what you're doing. And I want you to listen to the heart of the flock camera owners, the CEOs, the salesmen. I want you to hear the conversations that they're having and how they view what they are doing to the American people, how excited they are to quickly multiply and spread their watchful eye everywhere, the most regular, ordinary places based on franchise capacity and per capita and extensive reach and trust by the American people. Take a listen to this.
General has 7,000 stores. When employees terminated, they're added to a localized hot list.
Segue into your corporate business, because again, people associate you with selling to municipalities, but obviously you sell a lot to corporates as well.
Yeah. It's a big part of our business. We don't proxy towards necessarily like market cap or revenue. We proxy to physical locations. Like how many locations? So someone like a Dollar General is a way better prospect for us because Dollar General has 7,000 stores.
That's Subway.
Yeah, you want Subway is a good example.
Is their
of
main
both of
challenge theft? Like that's what they're worried about?
I'd say employees is, I'd say 3 years ago when we started the business unit, it was assets. The assets is like, it's good, but worst case, you just raise prices. Think about some of these businesses, they might terminate 500,000 people a year, 250,000 people a year. It takes one angry employee to come back. And so in our system, you can have it automated, with your HRS that like when employees is terminated, they're added to a localized hot list. That employee ever comes back on campus, it's not illegal, but notify security is why people have security teams. Like don't let them in the building.
Now listen, as a business owner, and private companies have the right to do whatever kind of surveillance that they want to on their own businesses to protect what rightfully belongs to them. That's not what we're concerned about here. What we're talking about is what he did not say, which is the part where the data that is accumulated is now for sale. And if they want more information on each of these people, the owners, or whoever is willing to pay the price, you just need to provide certain information, and all of a sudden you have access to that person completely, to every single thing going on in their lives. They're not telling you that part. This is not just security. I've been to security companies. I've seen how they secure the property and do all that. Got it. Done. That is not this. This is the ability to actually have data on you without permission and then be able to sell that data to other buyers. This isn't just a surveillance camera system. One of the things that he said too, I thought was really interesting, and just to keep in mind, encouraging employers to put their employees on quote hot lists. And so all of a sudden, again, you're making lists of American citizens, determining them to be potentially, uh, criminals. You're making criminal lists of people and asking for extra special surveillance on these people who have no idea that that's even happening. And whether or not they've given them reason to beyond being fired, I think this is just, again, this is bizarre. It's a little bit more than we believed was happening with camera systems and with security systems. And I think you should be very, very aware. The oversight and governance that is happening, whether it's oil and gas companies where you can't even drive your truck anymore, like you have a camera in the truck, you've got a governor on your speed, you're constantly tracked and surveilled in your truck, which by the way is taking away a lot of motivation for men to work in oil and gas companies that are doing that. By the way, it's just a legitimate point about the overreach and gosh, what do they call that? Like the micromanagement of humanity, period. It's very evident we're going to continue to move in that direction. And they've got the stamp of approval by government. We either start fighting for our freedom to just be and to be natural humans without constantly being watched. Here's how bad it is in my mind. It's so bad in my mind that we actually might have need for real unions who will actually work to advocate for the freedoms of workers for real. And this would be one of those things I would be advocating against, the 24/7 surveillance, both on campus and off. of employees. That is insane. That is stalker. That is any regular person would be going to jail. It's very bizarre. I don't know really understand how we're moving so quickly in this direction other than to say that there was a public private partnership. There is money being exchanged. Somebody's getting certain percentages and another one's getting another to replicate this flock camera system very quickly across the country and get this done. This is not organic. You don't have this kind of a movement in less than 2 years organically. It just isn't. I'm telling you, this does not happen the way it's happening right now. There's no way. So keep your eye on these things and be listening to what they're actually telling you. Don't tell yourself it's something different than other than what they have said. They mean what they're saying. And they're proud of it because they're surrounded by people who no longer believe in freedom and in self-determination and in privacy. And I'll tell you why. There was an interesting video that just ran I just saw it for the first time last night. And it was with Alex Jones, of course, and a table full of guys who have worked for central intelligence agencies and different parts of the government. And they were saying that as we're sitting right now, like literally as we're sitting right now, that there's no human in the world who cannot be surveilled by the government based off of frequencies that are applied to people by these security agencies, these three-letter agencies in our government. And based off of what agency is surveilling you, you will have a different this is not a joke, that you will have a different frequency that follows you around. That sounds like science fiction to me, but they were able actually to demonstrate it and show the frequencies that were coming up with each person based on who they believed the agency was that was following them. They've been doing this data for 20 years. So that kind of having that sort of information, I could definitely see how someone like the Flock Camera CEO could justify what he's doing by saying, well, the government already has it. I'm just going to cash in on it. That's where the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. That's where you realize one day you're going to cash in your chips as well. And you're going to stand in front of the creator and you're going to have to give a justification for the things that you've done here on earth. And one of the most fundamental, basic human, I would say, rights is the right to privacy, to self determination. And this police state oversight absolutely removes that ability, that capability. It's bizarre to see us going down this route. And I'm thinking more and more about what I really believe about this whole situation because it's happening so fast. It's becoming acceptable so quickly that if the regular everyday Mr. Guns of the world don't push back, we're going to find ourselves in a really unbelievable situation. And like I said, if this can come to my tiny little East Texas town where literally they're like, come and take it. And then all of a sudden, a constitutional sheriff is like, this is a great idea. This is the best idea ever. We support it. And by the way, we didn't tell the truth. It wasn't just a grant. We actually used taxpayer dollars to fund it. That's troubling. It's really troubling. Either people are really in need of money or there's been some other kind of deals made. It should not be happening in rural America. Deflock.org, go check it out today. Figure out where these cameras are in your neighborhood and start lobbying for the removal of them immediately. This is not a partnership that's going to work out for you and me. I can tell you that right now. All right, moving right along. I want to get into the election front for a minute before we get into the bulk of our time together today, because the trans movement is on a mission, and they are making they're making they're they're getting it done. They're getting it done. They're making a huge imprint in the lives and the souls of our children in this country, and they're shaping the virtue system in a way that is obviously not correct. It's obviously not what virtues really are. It obviously is not what morality is. But by using manipulation and obviously lying to the public through their trans ideology and their trans cult, um, they're making headway. They really are. So I'm going to share a couple of things with you guys today and what to be watching for and kind of break down some of the arguments a little bit today because this is I think it's very important because when you watch people like Hickenlooper, Senator Hickenlooper, who has always been a very reasonable person, always been able to understand basic anatomy, and all of a sudden he is siding with the trans cult movement in a way that he hasn't before, and you're seeing money be exchanged by Michael Bennet, Senator Bennet of the state of Colorado, and by the millions of dollars flowing into these LGBTQIA MAP trans queer offices in Colorado, by the millions of dollars, it just gives you pause. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But before we get there, very huge breaking story just yesterday. This is so important to the American people. You know, for years we've been fighting to secure our local elections. As the executive director of the Lindell Offense Fund, I've spent the last 5 years being submerged in election security, election issues happening across the country. I have forgotten more of what I now know about elections and election fraud and election interference, election machines, all of that over this last 5 years. It's you're just we are inundated daily with more information happening on the election front. So this one was very, very, very important. I wanted to make sure you did not miss this because when President Trump set up his executive order saying that our elections are critical infrastructure and so therefore they need to be treated as such. They need to have the protection of the federal government over them. People did get very concerned, and I agree with that because the states have more authority than the federal government. You never want to encourage a dictatorship. The federal government cannot have the say over the rights of states. So even as Colorado is suing the Trump administration over and over and over, the state has the right to do that. They have the right to fight for the communist policies that they want based off of the selections of their elections there, these quote leaders and representatives who are running Colorado. But unfortunately, that is what the law says, and they do get to do that, and we should protect that. I believe that completely. Just like the First Amendment, I believe in states' rights. The Constitution lays that out. They trump federal every time. But in federal elections, the Constitution is also very clear that the federal government shall govern the federal elections. Okay. So here is what happened in a DC Circuit Court ruling yesterday. This is breaking because the Democrat Party, actually, the DNC, actually appealed the executive order that was put out by President Trump. They appealed a portion, well, almost all of it, that was asking for voter ID. Right? We're asking that people show that they are in fact legal citizens. Well, there's a portion of that that the DC court said we are not going to appeal that. Okay, we're going to keep that. We'll look at the rest of this, but this part right here, we're keeping. And that particular part is so critical. This is the part where President Trump, by executive order, stated that those who are participating in the federal election, so that's Congress, Senate, and President, okay, they're going to vote in that election. They have to reach out to USPS. They have to sign up online, and we know they have to sign up online because the union, the USPS union head, said that this was the process by which people would have to follow in order to get a mail in ballot to vote in the federal elections. So, what do they have to do? They have to go onto USPS.org and they have to fill out their information, all their personal information, to receive a mail in ballot in the state that they live in. This is so huge because there's several ramifications that are going to come out of this. Number one, at least our federal elections will be more secure. In the age of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, this is massive because remember, the left and the deep state, they wanted millions of illegals flooding into our country so that by numbers, they could steal those votes for their candidate of choice. Okay. We now know, of course, it could be the left, it could be the right, it doesn't matter. They have an agenda, the deep state, the NWO, they have an agenda and they're going to pick who that person is. Okay. So when they allowed for 30 million, we now have somewhere around 30 million illegal aliens living in this country. All you need is a name. That's why I was always opposed to this voter registration nonsense where you're running around trying to force people to register to vote and getting their names on these vote lists because the likelihood that they would actually vote was less than 15%. So that left 85% of the people who were being harassed to sign up to vote because they had no interest in it, or they would have signed up to vote a long time ago. They would have registered to vote a long time ago. So they sign up, and now their name can be used. If you don't cast your ballot, you better plan that someone else is going to. And that is the problem. Now, I can't remember his name, the long haired homosexual guy that runs around doing voter registration.
Scott
What's his
Pressler.
name? Sorry, Scott Pressler. Like, I'm so not a fan, massively not a fan, because I actually understand how this fraud works and how it's been done over and over. And this guy would not listen. He would not listen to experts. He would not listen to Colonel Sean Smith. He would not listen to Clay Parikh. He would not listen to anybody except his own self and his little mission that he was on. Please, nobody remember that his dad is secret, is special intelligence in the military. Please, nobody remember that. Scott Pressler has really been a stain on the election security movement, in my opinion. And I can have that opinion because I know the truth. I know what's gone down. I've been there to watch it and seen his disrespect for our military men and his disregard for the truth of what his project was actually doing. And I'm not paid by anybody to say this. I've just watched it and seen it. People who are doing the whole voter registration stuff, it really just a con because those people are not interested. We already know the data, we know the numbers, and it leaves about 85% of those people who were compelled to register who had no desire of their own to vote. It leaves those names vacant now to be stolen and used for selections in our elections. And that is just the fact. I hope I've explained that well. So never been a fan of any of that. Well, in the federal election space, at least, this is going to nip a lot of the direction of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which I believe was implemented obviously by Jared Polis, the openly homosexual governor of the state of Colorado, who has been advancing the most radical mutilation policies of children in the entire country. That guy, along with his partners in California and Maine, initiated the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and they're up now to about 240 electorate votes. Once they hit 270, they will enact the national popular vote to trump the Electoral College. That's very bad because, as we've learned, these people largely aren't voting. They're not legitimate voters. They are fake voters that are their names, they're just names on a list that are being used to cast a ballot behind them. So now that the United States Postal Service has been brought into this to have to definitively uh, compile the list is coming from them, compile the list and compare it with that the Secretary of State gives them of real voters. This will dramatically, I believe it will. I'm going to be interested to see how they commit fraud on this, but it should dramatically decrease the number of illegal voters in our federal elections. So that's number one. It slows down the rush to the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is just absolutely detrimental. It's mob mentality. It's brute force rule, biggest bat wins, and who can cheat the hardest. We do not want that here. We've seen that in Venezuela. We've seen it in Cuba. We've seen it in Zimbabwe. We've seen it in Brazil. You see it everywhere. You've seen it in Russia. You see it everywhere that is not a civilized constitutional republic. In America, we have the Electoral College to protect us from mob rule. Okay. So that diminishes greatly. That takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails of that illegal movement. By the way, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional. Why it hasn't been challenged, why those governors who have signed on to it have not been investigated and prosecuted for trying to subvert the American people and the United States government. I do not know why. But General Dillon, we should look into this. Second thing that it does is actually finally makes a verifiable list of legal voters, of actual legal voters. Now, what's going to end up happening with this is the citizens are going to have access to this list. They will be able to compare the federal vote list with the state vote list. For all of you out there who have been working on election security and sniffing out all the election crime and the fraudulent ballots, the dead voters, those who moved who were still voting and they never cast a ballot in that state that they moved from, you are going to have an incredible tool in your box now. You're going to have two lists. You're going to be able to compare these lists because states like Colorado, remember, they send out indiscriminately mail-in ballots to every citizen in the state to vote in the state elections. They will not be able to do that with the federal election. So you're going to be able to see who is actually, you're going to have a list. You're going to have verifiable lists that you can go and actually be able to canvass immediately to figure out if these people even exist. I'm so excited for this. This is literally our canvas list, you guys. We'll take the federal, we'll compare it with the state on the precinct level. On the precinct level, you'll be able to go and hit three or four precincts in a day and figure out who the illegal voters are, deliver that information to your sheriff, and let's start getting some prosecutions for whoever is allowing illegal voters on the state lists. So that's number two. Very, very, very exciting to me. Number three, I believe there's going to be a natural domino effect. So I've been looking at this for a long time, obviously. I'm really passionate about this. I write about it a lot. I believe there's going to be a domino effect on this also, where states will, because right now, those that are going to be belligerent and don't want to follow because they don't want to use the ballots that have the federal candidates on it because they don't want to apply the USPS rules and the verification of voters to their state lists because they're cheating. You're going to be able to see who the cheaters are because they're going to want two separate ballots. They do not want voter ID verification. You're going to see who the cheaters are. And I'm so curious to hear how the clerks, the counties individually are going to sort this out. Will the counties have control? I doubt it in the blue states. Jenna Griswold obviously assumed dictator, Secretary of State role after the Tina Peters case. She became the dictator in charge. Everything flows through her, but I'm not sure about other states like California, Maine, and Nevada. I'm not sure how those are going to go. But what we do know right now is they will probably have two separate ballots. You've got your canvas list. It's going to be exponentially more expensive for the Democrat states and those who just frankly don't want to know the truth about their elections, possibly some Alabama people in there. I've always wondered about Alabama a little bit. They are not going to want to ultimately spend that money. And states like Colorado, they've already blown their budgets. They're in a massive deficit. They're not going to be able to afford to do two separate ballots all throughout all 64 counties. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out. Will they compile onto one ballot, which means that if you have the federal candidates on the state on the state ballot, then you're going to have to be in compliance with voter ID. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't just walk in and vote for the state candidates if the federal are on there without showing voter ID, which means you're not going to be able to do drop boxes or very, very limited drop boxes. The trickle down effect of the DC, by the way, leftist court, very left leaning, very liberal court, ruling on this is massive. And the Democrats know it. The deep state knows it. There are people mad as hell today about this ruling, and I did want to share this. One of the great social media accounts on X that I follow regarding the events in Colorado, and Jenna Griswold posted this up initially, and I was so excited to see it because it is true that the Secretary of State's like Jenna Griswold, who by the way is running for Attorney General of the state of Colorado, that con artist. She has to provide the voter list now to the USPS per federal law before any ballots can be mailed out in the 2026 election. I am with him. This is going to be very interesting. This is the Denver Fail account. You should go follow that. There is so much great information because this is going to get very, very touchy. There are some decisions that are going to need to be made. And if I know anything, those at the Department of Justice who are involved in watching the violation of election laws, of federal election laws, they are foaming at the mouth right now to prosecute. They will be prosecuting. It will be hard. It will be fascinating. And I can't wait to see how this judgment by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals actually plays out in real life. You guys, we have an ally in President Trump. We have an ally at the DOJ who are fighting for elections in this country because if we can't get our elections right, if we cannot trust that we are having real elections in this country, we are no better than any of those countries I listed earlier who are not able to live free, who cannot produce, who cannot, who are in constant police state and surveillance and being ruled by little dictators. That's the end game for us to have selected people like Jenna Griswold, like Phil Weiser, like Jared Polis, who do not believe you have the right to self-determine your own life. They have plans. The re-westernizing, the wilding of the West campaign to drive out human beings to rewild the West and restore it to 1860s. I mean, they're insane. These people are insane. They hate humans, they hate humanity, they hate babies, except for when they're trying to trans them. Them, let me qualify that. They like you if you're a trans baby, okay? But otherwise, let them sit there. Let them 28 days to decide if you really want to keep this baby that just popped out of you. They do not like humanity. And in that spirit, they make decisions for us and policies for us that are just god awful. They're god awful, they're debilitating, and they basically suck the soul out of humanity. The joy, the fun, it's unbelievable. The legacy, the ability to leave a legacy for your family, to be able to have your own wealth machine, they don't want that for you. They do not want that for you. So this ruling by the DC Circuit Court is massive. The fallout for this is going to be incredibly interesting to watch. Again, the court was very clear. They are upholding this portion of President Trump's executive order. It is game on. Game on. So be watching and figure out what needs to be done in your own local community. All right, so we're gosh, I know I went on a bit, but this last portion of our show today. So again, I started out in America's Mom started because there was a very efficient and quick movement that just kind of came upon Colorado to sexualize children. I didn't know it was already spreading throughout the rest of the country because I had never known about this. I was never really political. I didn't. I just was raising kids and trying to figure out how they could have a decent education, and started realizing there's some weird stuff going on in school. And comprehensive sex education was one of those. That was a law that was passed in Colorado as soon as Jared Polis took office. It was one of the radical bills that he passed the first 90 days of his administration. Now, the laws that have been compiled on top of comprehensive sex education are shocking, disgusting, unbelievable, anti parent, pro mutilation of children, concealment, teaching kids to lie to their parents, to their families, and making the state via the public school system and their teachers their new family and their new parents, because your parents suck because they don't want you to mutilate yourself and they don't want you or need you to invert yourself in order to be loved and accepted as you are. Okay, only the trans cult needs you to do that. The trans cult is a religion, make no mistake about it. It is a religion and it requires the ultimate sacrifice. You must invert in the order of Baphomet. If you're not familiar with Baphomet, you should look that up. That is a satanic male female inversion creature looking thing that is referred to a lot in paganism and Satanism. And it's very prolific in the trans movement. It is inversion and self mutilation, self destruction. And in order to be whole again, you must invert and mutilate yourself. And then you will find happiness. Sounds like a lot of faith to me to follow that religion, but boy, are they dug in. They are passionate about what they believe. In some ways, you're like, man, I wish Christians were more like that. In some ways, in their passion and their commitment to their cults, to their religion. But I want to show you a couple of tools that are going around. I talked about the gender identity dolls that Minnesota is going to be launching, that was created by two intellects at Minnesota University, because you have to be really smart to believe that children can change their gender by cutting off their body parts, apparently. And now we're going to teach 4-year-olds to do that with visual aids and dolls, showing them how it's possible. The sexualization of children is why I started Moms for America, or excuse me, America's Mom, and then became associated with Moms for America because I didn't know that they existed at that time. And so I am going to continue to shine a light on this. I'm actually involved in an anti-slap case this week in Colorado. I have 2 accusers against me who have filed restraining orders against me. I live 1,000 miles away from them, but they feel that they are physically at risk because of my words about them. Actually, one of them I've never spoken about, the other I have, because I believe that mutilating children is wrong. I believe that the trans cult fundamentally is satanic, and asking children to invert and destroy themselves is satanic, right? That I believe that 100%. I spent 17 years with along with my husband, working with children who were incarcerated in Division of Youth Corrections, and I have seen some stuff in the lives of these children, not to mention my own life. And I absolutely am in opposition of anyone who is seeking to destroy children, period. It doesn't matter who you are or how you identify. I will be against you because it's wrong. Children need to be protected and loved for who they are, not who you think they should mutilate themselves to become. Okay. So here's some tools that are being used. I'm going to share some books with you guys. A really great tool just before we get started: autogynephilia. Autogynephilia. Have you guys heard of that word? That was the trans movement before it was the trans movement. That was the understanding that men who were cosplaying women were really just doing it for erotical purposes. That was their sexuality. It was very well understood. Cross dressers, if you want to call them that. This was a form of sexual identity. Okay. Not identity as in I'm just being a regular person out here trying to live my life as cosplaying another gender. No, they understood they were doing what they were doing because ultimately that's how they got off. But, people started getting mad because they didn't want to be seen as deviants to the public because they needed to get close to children. Let's just be really honest about it. They needed to get close to kids because they had some fetishes, they had some deviance in them, and it required them to have access to children. So they started normalizing autogynephilia and calling it transgenderism. You just have gender dysphoria. And if you can just start taking hormones and cut some stuff off, you're going to fill the hole in your heart. And we'll actually let you teach kids in America, in Colorado, we're going to let you be right by children all the time. In fact, we might even make you a house mother if you're really great. If you really fall in line with the satanic agenda, we're going to make you a house mother so you can really mentor and groom these children into the next stages of your religion. So, this is an excellent, 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 excellent book called Trans. It's written by Helen Joyce, and it is the experts of this field, who lots of them, by the way, have been autogynephilic, I think is how you would call it, or consider themselves to be transgendered. And even they finally had to put a little, put their foot out there and say, hold up, wait a minute. Children are off limits. They used to be off limits, used to be, but it became part of the fetish. Because what I've learned, what we've all learned together is the more that you qualify deviance, it's not enough for them. Once you come into agreement that, okay, gay marriage, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. What was the next thing? I remember having this argument with my cousin, and I was like, at the minute that we say gay marriage is fine, we're going to see an uptick in pedophilia. And I mean, I don't even think it was 6 months later, you started seeing the light pink and light blue flag things flying everywhere. That is pedophilia. That's not about transgenderism. It is about sexualizing children because certain adults get off on it by conforming children and mutilating them, right? Inverting and mutilating them. They get off on it. That's the reality of it. I'm not backing away from that. That is the reality of it. That's what Helen Joyce says. And Helen Joyce is an expert in this field, noted as an expert throughout the entire world on the subject. So I'm repeating what Helen Joyce said about it, and it makes sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to me. So this book is absolutely incredible. It is a very, very deep read. I've read it a couple of times now, trying to understand how we got where we're at right now, where instead of telling mentally ill people, and that's being generous, by the way, calling them mentally ill is an adult who is practicing transgenderism or autogynephilia, who wants to be around children to coax them into transgenderism, to groom them into it. That's being generous to say they have mental illness. So just know that's being generous. I'm not so sure it's mental illness anymore. I think it's a deliberate fixation on a certain form of erotica, and they get off on knowing that the public is actually sympathizing with them and feeling bad for them when in fact they are deviants to the core. They are absolutely 100% perverts to the core. Okay. That's what I believe more and more after I read what the experts have to say, who've lived this lifestyle, by the way, lived this life and have recorded the stories of many, many people who would identify as transgender and then finally come to terms with the reality that it was a sexual identity. It had nothing to do with humanity. Rather, it was about what made them aroused. So, with that, in real life, I've always told my children, you do not need to be anything other than what you are. You just need to grow, though. Grow in your integrity, grow in virtue, grow in these characteristics that are commanding of leaders and will command great things to come forth in the future. I've never looked at my child and say, "Oh, you're okay." But to my son, since you play with baby dolls, we're going to I have this little tool. I saw you playing with baby dolls. So we're going to look at this really quick cuz you may not actually be a boy. You're playing with baby dolls and I've seen you dress up in your sister's princess gowns. We need to see if you're actually a boy or not. You may This is a tool that's used on children, by the way, okay? This is a tool that's used on children. I have its body identity and expression, okay? So I have a body that made adults say not sure. This is actually presented to children. And what they start with is they start on the outside with things you like. Things you like. Let's say you're a little boy and you like holding baby dolls because you know what? You've got little siblings or you always wanted to have a sibling or maybe you just think they're cute and you want to hold babies because they're cute. Maybe you're just a compassionate little guy. I don't know. You just like holding babies. All of my boys, by the way, loved holding baby dolls. I wanted them to. I wanted them to know the difference between when they needed to be strong and out there, conquering, and also when it was time to be nurturing and gentle, because I want them to be good fathers one day. Imagine that. Little boys who are going to grow up to be good fathers need to know how to nurture. So they would say on here, oh, by the way, my boys always wanted their toenails painted. They wanted blue, black, red. They just thought it was cool to have their nails painted. It was like part of their costume. They loved it. Super fun. I was painting my nails, and so they'd sit down and be like, "Paint my nails, paint my toes." I didn't feel like it was a thing when they're little to be like, I was like, "Cool. What color you want? No big deal." If I start listing out the things that my boys, all of them, enjoyed when they were little, because they were hanging out with mom all day long, then I would go to what I am as an identity. If their expression, if the actions and the things they liked were a reflection of their identity, this little tool right here would have my boys believing that they were actually potentially a girl or two spirited or third gender or bigender or neutral or gender neutral. This is ridiculous, but this is a tool that's being used on 4 years old and up. And it lists all of these nonsensical things that have nothing to do with reality at all. And people, adults, will actually sit down with your child and start going through this and start causing confusion. Start making them think that they are not what they thought they were, what their parents have told them they are, a little girl or a little boy. And then in the very middle, like I said, I have a blank body. This is probably the most disturbing of it all. I have a body that made adults guess girl. We didn't guess anything. Adults didn't guess anything. This is the language that these woke people are using, people who are advancing the trans cult are using on your children to start making them think that they are in the wrong body. And you've seen the stories, Aaron Lee's. I've had detransitioners share some of their stories now. We're having more on soon. These are the stories that they were being told, that they were not good enough as they were. They couldn't be a little girl that liked to play with trucks, which don't even get me started on my daughter jumping off of stairs, being just totally crazy, wild adventurer girl, jumping off of everything, loving to play trucks with her brother, being wild. And did that make her a boy? I'm sorry. I had no idea that girls and boys couldn't have similar likes. I had no idea. According to the trans cult, if you're a girl liking things that would be considered boy, well, you're in the, you must be a boy, or maybe you're gender neutral. Maybe you're asexual. Why would I need to talk to a child about these things? They are experiencing the world for the first time. They have no idea yet what they like or don't like. They're just experiencing it and they're enjoying it, climbing trees because they never climbed a tree before. It's so wild what the trans cult will turn into something sexual because it's going to be all about who they sleep with eventually. It's going to be all about that because it changes everything for that child that they introduce onto hormones or have literal amputation done. It's going to change everything for them for the rest of their lives in that capacity. But I wanted to share some books with you too, because again, in my religion, the only thing that you're trying to correct is your aptitude to do the wrong thing, to sin against the creator. And he's very clear about, what sin is and how that works. But in the trans cult, it's a sin to be happy in the body you were born with. That's the sin. And now we're going to find all the different ways that we can change you so that you will finally be acceptable. Because all that's missing in this great big hole in your heart is inversion and mutilation. You don't know that yet, but you'll be groomed to believe it shortly enough. Teresa Thorne and Noah Grigney have gone to great lengths in this book about gender identity to let you know you are not okay in the body that God gave you. You're not okay. But don't worry, because we can nip and tuck that. We can erase that. Don't even worry. We can erase it. And we'll give you a new name on top of everything else. This is a very interesting book. I've read this online before. This one also, who are you? Let's create more confusion than ever by telling a child that they don't know who they are. And the only way to figure that out, again, is to entertain sexually who you are. We're talking about little kids here. We're talking about young children. This book is geared towards young children. The Kid's Guide to Gender Identity, because it's so important to confuse children when they're young, so they will grow up into your best disciples in the trans cult. They need to be young and pliable and manipulatable, because that is really when you'll get them. That's when you're going to get them. And here's the thing, the left knows that. Governor Jared Polis of Colorado, in his state address, he said that the children were the greatest commodity that we have. And he was talking about that with his movement. They're not wrong. And they have a corner on our kids. If I don't see protests in the street in Minnesota and anywhere else that those gender mutilation dolls show up, then the trans cult is winning. So this book is written by Brooke Pesson Wedby and illustrated by Naomi Bardoff. I doubt that's their real names, but there it is. This one is also really interesting. A House for Everyone. This is geared a little bit more towards, I would say, fourth grade and up. This particular book. And this book by Joe Hurst and illustrated by Naomi Bardoff. There she is again. She must be a real active member of the trans cult. They do a really great job of getting all of us. This is a virtue signaling book to the cis world. To those of us who are we're not conforming to the transgender movement, this is a virtue signaling book to you. Everybody deserves to exist in this world. Everybody, especially transgenders. They deserve to exist in this world. And if you say anything different, you're transphobic, you're mean, you're not even living how Christ would want you to live. This book is very interesting. It's a great manipulation book. Wonderful to manipulate the cis people, those religious Christian people. Oh my God, they're so transphobic. Well, read this book and you'll be converted immediately to at least be supportive. Okay. Be a P flag person. What is that? Parents and friends of lesbians and gays, run by a transgender, though, in some places. But whatever, nonetheless, you will at least be supportive. You will be after reading this book. And then the last one of all, I want to show you helping children understand the gift of gender. I have 4 children, okay? And I was basically like a mom to my little brother. I grew up with 3 brothers. It's really the weirdest thing. Nobody ever told me about the joy of gender. And, after I read this book, I felt like I had really missed out. I was like, the hole in my heart is filling right now that I've read this book. Now that I understand the joy of gender, I've changed. I've changed. My heart has changed. I feel less cis and more trans. Yeah. These books this one is by Marty Markowski. Um, it is so important that we have books like this particular one. Now, I'm teasing a little bit because actually this book does make a big difference. This is a counter to the trans movement. So these ones, and they look so similar, don't they? This is actually a good book that talks about actual boys and boys do not need to be girls, girls do not need to be boys. But look at how close, look at how nice and bright and cheery the trans books are. Especially this one. I mean, hats off to them. This is a very beautiful cover. It feels good to be yourself. That sounds like such a nice title, doesn't it? And this is the book, this is the Christian book that's explaining that God made you exactly how he meant for you to be. And the fact that we even have to talk about the joy of gender now is just insane. But it's because of books like this. These books are in your children's libraries. These are in your children's libraries right now. And they're reading them because what a nice title. What could be wrong with that? It's great to be you, but that's not the real message. The real message behind these three books that I just shared with you is counter to the message that God has said and what he has said about each of us. You are enough. You were created in the exact image that he wanted you to be created in. He did not mess up. You are not a mistake. And the arguments that are used to justify the mutilation and the inversion of little boys and little girls in this country, the arguments of being a hermaphrodite, maybe having a botched circumcision, things like that. Those are the same type of arguments that are used to justify abortion. The, less than 3% of women who have actually been raped who are searching for an abortion after rape. The whole gamut of abortion is justified off of that less than 3% model. It is the same thing happening with this transgender movement. You have a couple of, it's very, very low. I think it's actually less than 0.1% that are hermaphrodite or have had issues following a circumcision, something like that, where they're trying to figure out what to do, which obviously that big experiment went very, very badly when the doctors decided to make a little boy a little girl because of a botched circumcision. But he was not the only one. If you guys recall the story of the twins, one was made a girl after the circumcision. And of course, the other one was a boy, remained a boy. His circumcision went fine. The one who was turned into a female always knew there was something wrong. It did not work. He eventually would commit suicide because he was absolutely just in tremendous, tremendous internal pain for the lies that have been told to him. And that's what this is. That's what these all are. They are lies that are being sold and told to children to confuse them and make them think that they are in fact in the wrong body, that God made a mistake, and that in order to be made right, they must invert themselves to the opposite gender and then mutilate their bodies. That is satanic. That literally is practiced in paganism, Satanism, Baal worship, stemming from very dark corners that used to be kept in the shadows. But the problem now is we're bringing all of that to the front. The trans cult has been able to bring all that to the front and virtue signal all over all of us and tell us to conform to them or else. Or else what? Well, they'll take you to court. They'll slap protective orders against you so you can't own a gun. So that now you have a mark on your record so that you can't talk about what they're doing. We have the First Amendment in America to protect us because not all ideas are good ideas. Transgenderism is a horrible idea. Transgenderism on children is the worst idea ever brought and funded by our government. And I think it is extremely important right now that parents not get tired and not shrink back in the face of mounting and growing threats by the trans cult. It is a cult because you could never in real life believe in such a fantasy that to hurt yourself physically would equal relief and a wholeness in your heart. And that's what some have said. That's literally what some have said. This book is a counter to all of that. And actually, I was joking around about it just because I can't believe we have to talk about this. Marty Markowski is actually a Christian writer. This book, Boys and Girls, is an excellent contrary to the pro-trans content that is being put into your children's libraries. You need to be checking the libraries. We've told you guys, got to be checking the libraries, check online, make sure that those books are not in your library. They are, and they are there. And a couple of them were where I am. And so we've had to kind of be like, that's not appropriate. I'm not going to have my kid ever be reading something that tells them that they are not enough until they harm themselves. That's not going to work for me ever. As the trans cult continues to push their narrative, and you're going to see, obviously Title IX is being challenged everywhere, and General Dillon is hardcore tracking that. General Dillon's office has now taken over all civil matters related to Title IX and trans issues and LGBTQ issues in the schools. They will be dealing with that from henceforward because there are federal crimes involved here. on behalf of these adults who are pushing this stuff and allowing for these abuses to go on with our children, both those that are being, told that they need to be transgendered, and then those that are the recipients of losing privacy and losing position in sports and losing peace and safety in their own locker rooms. These kids are the victims. Okay, I have no problem with that. I believe that 100%. The children are the victims. They don't know. They don't know yet what they don't know. But the adults, they do know. So again, I want to recommend highly, 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 if you really want to get into the beginnings, the understandings of what has happened, where the trans cult movement came from, how it started, how it ended up where it is today, I highly recommend Helen Joyce's book, Trans. Very detailed, very scientific, and these are experts in this field that I'm deferring to. They seem to know exactly what they're talking about. Guys, it's so important more now than ever that we be protecting our children. 1-833-42 Protect Kid was created to support you parents, you children, staff. I would even say school staff members who are seeing this happen. Call the support line and report it. Tell us what's going on. Your number is secure, your information is secure, and your identity will be secure. This is a partnership with Moms for America, and we are here to help parents work through and navigate this very influential movement that is trying very hard to capture as many children as possible with it before it is completely cast out. And we've got a ways to go. So please, please take advantage. 1-833-42 Protect Kid. Reach out. You will have support. You will even have access to legal uh, uh, advice, counsel, and potentially representation as you need it. So please reach out today. Thank you guys so much for being with us. We did run a little bit long, but I think it's a really critical time right now. Very important as we're heading back into the school year. You're going to be starting those fun little the end of the summer classes, introducing your kids to teachers who it will be very evident right away, I believe, because they make it very obvious that they do not share your same values. And that is not something that you should tell your children they just have to deal with. I do not believe that, because the end of this particular ideology is death. And those who have come back from the brink of it, well, thank God. But there are many that have not. We didn't even talk about the suicide rate today of transgenders. And it is not because of a lack of acceptance. Not anymore. Absolutely not. And even when people didn't accept it, the transgender suicide rate was nothing like where it is now. Nothing, because it is in violation of nature. And children know that. Deep inside, they know this isn't it. But they're searching. And they've been told this is the path. Protect your children. Remember, all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do absolutely nothing. I am very much looking forward to being in Colorado. We will have our evidentiary hearing on Friday morning at 9 a.m. at the Garfield County Courthouse. And for those of you who are in the area and want to come out, please come out. I don't know if it's an open court or not, but we'll have lunch after. I don't know. Love to see all of you, or as many of you as possible that can be there. Be great. I'm very, very excited to contest all of this. We live in America, and I have the right, just as you have the right, to not like what people are doing and to be able to speak publicly about that. And that's what's being challenged here in this anti-SLAPP evidentiary hearing on Friday. And it is absolutely pertaining to the trans world and what's happening there, and what I, as a mother, will never tolerate. And God hasn't given me a voice and given me this passion for protecting children just to sit at home and watch soap operas and allow this cult to just take over. And He certainly hasn't done that for you either. If you have the drive and you have the grit to protect children, you should be doing that. You should be doing that. We need it in spades right now. Thank you guys so much for being with us today. And we'll give you an update next Monday. So no show on Friday. We'll give you an update on Monday of everything that has happened. And we have no idea. We will see. We will see what goes on. But I look forward to seeing you guys all back here on Monday. So no show on Friday. We will see you on Monday. God bless you all. And thank you for joining.